Title: The Lost Treasure of Blackbeard's Cove. Chapter 1. As the sun began to set over the vast expanse of the ocean, a group of adventurers sailed towards the infamous Blackbeard's Cove. Their goal was to find the treasure that had been lost for centuries. Legend had it that Blackbeard had hidden his treasure somewhere in the cove, and that it was guarded by an array of traps and puzzles that only the most daring and clever could overcome. The adventurers consisted of 4 people: Max, the captain of the ship, his first mate, Amelia, Diego, the navigator, and Lily, the archaeologist. Max was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a thick beard and piercing blue eyes. He had sailed the 7 seas for many years and had seen things that most people could only dream of. Amelia was a fierce, determined woman with short black hair and a scar that ran down her cheek. She had been Max's first mate for years and had saved his life on numerous occasions. Diego was a lanky man with dark skin and sharp features. He had a keen sense of direction and had helped Max and Amelia navigate many treacherous waters. Finally, Lily was a small, thin woman with glasses and long brown hair. She was an expert in ancient civilizations and had come along on the expedition to decipher the clues that led to the treasure. As they neared the cove, Max barked out orders to his crew. "Drop anchor and prepare the dinghy," he yelled. "We'll need to row to shore if we want to avoid the rocks." The crew quickly obeyed, and soon they were rowing towards the beach. As they landed on the sand, Lily pulled out a map and a compass. "According to the legend," she said, "the treasure is located in a cave somewhere in these cliffs." She pointed to a set of jagged rocks that loomed overhead. "But we'll have to be careful. Blackbeard was known to booby-trap his treasures." The group set off towards the cliffs, scanning the ground for any signs of danger. As they approached the base of the cliffs, they saw a set of footprints leading towards a narrow gap between 2 rocks. "This must be it," said Lily. "According to the map, the cave is just beyond this opening." They carefully made their way through the gap and into a dark, narrow tunnel. The air was damp and musty, and the walls were slick with moisture. "Keep your wits about you," warned Amelia. "We don't know what kind of traps Blackbeard has set up." As they walked deeper into the cave, they saw a faint glow ahead of them. As they approached, they saw that it was a small chamber filled with gold coins, jewels, and other precious items. "Jackpot!" exclaimed Diego. But as he reached out to grab a handful of coins, a hidden trapdoor opened beneath his feet, and he plummeted into a pit below. Diego limped down the hallway, using the torches to steady himself. As he approached the second door, he could hear the sound of rushing water on the other side. He pushed open the door and found himself in a large chamber, with a deep pool in the center. On the other side of the pool was a small pedestal, with a glittering jewel resting on top. Diego knew that this must be another one of Blackbeard's traps. He looked around the room, searching for any clues as to how to proceed. As he scanned the walls, he saw a series of markings etched into the stone. He studied the markings carefully, and realized that they formed a map of the cave system. The map showed a series of tunnels and chambers, each marked with a different symbol. He studied the map for a few minutes, and then he had an idea. Chapter 2. Diego landed with a thud in a small, dimly lit room. The walls were made of rough stone, and the only light came from a small torch in the corner. As he tried to stand up, he realized that his leg was broken. "Great," he muttered to himself. "Just what we needed." As he looked around the room, he saw that there was a small wooden door on the far wall. He limped over to it and pushed it open. On the other side of the door was a long hallway, lined with torches. At the end of the hallway was another wooden door. He took off his shirt and used it to make a makeshift sling for his broken leg. Then he waded into the pool, using his good leg to propel himself forward. He reached the pedestal and carefully lifted the jewel from its resting place. As he did so, he heard a rumbling sound, and the walls of the chamber began to shake. He realized that he had triggered another trap, and he needed to get out of there quickly. He turned to swim back to the other side of the pool, but he realized that the water level had risen, and he was now too short to touch the bottom. He started to panic, but then he remembered the map. He looked at the symbols on the wall and then looked back at the map. He realized that the symbols corresponded to a sequence of tunnels that led out of the cave system. He quickly traced the symbols in his mind and then started to swim in the direction that he thought was correct. The water was rising quickly, and he could feel his lungs starting to burn. But he kept swimming, following the symbols as best he could. Just as he thought he couldn't hold his breath any longer, he saw a faint light up ahead. He swam towards the light and burst through the surface of the water, gasping for air. He had emerged in a small underground pool, with a shaft of light coming down from a hole in the ceiling. He looked up and saw the faces of his companions peering down at him. "Diego! Are you okay?" shouted Max. Diego nodded, too out of breath to speak. Amelia and Lily quickly lowered a rope down to him, and he climbed up, clutching the jewel tightly. Chapter 3. As Diego emerged from the tunnel, he saw that the rest of the group had been busy. They had found a series of clues that had led them to a hidden room, filled with ancient artifacts and documents. Lily was poring over a set of dusty scrolls, muttering to herself. Amelia was examining a set of strange, carved stones, and Max was pacing back and forth, muttering about how they were running out of time. "We need to get out of here," he said. "We've spent too much time in this cave already. The tide is coming in, and we'll be stranded if we don't leave soon." Lily looked up from her scrolls. "I think I've deciphered the last of the clues," she said. "According to this, the treasure is located on the far side of the island, in a cave that can only be accessed at low tide." Max nodded. "Then let's go. We'll take the dinghy around to the other side of the island and make our way to the cave." The group quickly gathered up their supplies and headed back to the beach. As they rowed around the island, they could see the sun setting on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the sea. They landed on the shore of the far side of the island, and made their way through the thick jungle towards the cave. As they walked, they heard the sound of drums in the distance. Max grew increasingly nervous, but the others urged him to press on. They had come too far to turn back now. They finally reached the entrance to the cave, just as the last rays of sunlight were disappearing. They could hear the sound of waves crashing against the rocks outside, and the smell of saltwater filled the air. They cautiously made their way into the cave, using their torches to light the way. The walls were covered in moss and lichen, and the air was damp and musty. As they rounded a corner, they saw a figure standing in front of them. It was a tall, imposing man with a long beard and a pirate's hat. It was Blackbeard himself. "Welcome, my friends," said Blackbeard, with a smile. "I've been expecting you." Diego stepped forward, clutching the jewel tightly. "We've come for the treasure," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Blackbeard chuckled. "Ah, the treasure. Yes, it's here. But first, you must prove yourselves worthy." He gestured towards a set of pillars on the other side of the room. "You must each take a turn standing on one of those pillars. If you are worthy, the treasure will be revealed." The group exchanged a nervous glance, but they knew they had no choice. They stepped forward, each taking a turn standing on the pillars. As they did so, they felt a strange energy coursing through their bodies. They could hear whispers in their ears, and see visions of ancient pirates and sea monsters. When they had all taken their turn, Blackbeard smiled. "You are worthy," he said. "The treasure is yours." He led them to a small alcove in the wall, where a chest was hidden. Diego opened the chest and gasped at what he saw inside. It was filled with gold coins, jewels, and precious artifacts. It was the treasure of a lifetime. As they were admiring the treasure, they heard a loud noise from outside. They rushed to the entrance of the cave and saw a group of pirates approaching. "We've been followed," said Max, drawing his sword. "We have to defend ourselves." The group prepared for battle, with Diego using his sling to protect his broken leg. They fought bravely, taking down several of the pirates. But they were outnumbered, and the tide was coming in. "We have to get out of here," shouted Amelia, grabbing a handful of jewels from the chest. "We'll come back for the rest later." The group rushed out of the cave and back to the dinghy. They rowed as fast as they could, with the pirates hot on their trail. Just as they were about to be overtaken, they saw a ship on the horizon. It was the Coast Guard, coming to their rescue. They breathed a sigh of relief as they were pulled aboard the ship. They had made it out alive, with the treasure of a lifetime. As they sailed away from the island, they knew that they would always remember their adventure in the cave of the pirates' treasure. Max retired from his life of piracy and became a respected merchant, using his share of the treasure to fund his business ventures. Amelia used her share of the treasure to start her own pirate crew, becoming one of the most feared captains on the high seas. And even though they went their separate ways, the group remained close friends, meeting up occasionally to reminisce about their adventure in the cave of the pirates' treasure. Years went by, and the group grew old. They had many more adventures, but none quite as exciting as their first one. Eventually, one by one, they passed away, leaving behind their own legacies and tales of adventure. But the legend of the cave of the pirates' treasure lived on, inspiring generations of treasure hunters and adventurers to seek out the fabled treasure. And although no one ever found it again, many believed that it was still out there, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek it out. Years turned into decades, and the legend of the cave of the pirates' treasure continued to fascinate people from all around the world. Treasure hunters and adventurers from every corner of the globe came to the island, searching for the fabled treasure. But the island had changed since Diego and his friends had visited it. It had become overrun with pirates and criminals, who would do anything to get their hands on the treasure. The once beautiful island had become a dangerous and lawless place, with battles between rival pirate crews breaking out daily. The treasure hunters who came in search of the treasure were often met with violence and hostility, and many were forced to abandon their search. But despite the danger, some still came. They believed that the treasure was worth the risk, that it was their destiny to find it. One of these treasure hunters was a young woman named Samantha. She had grown up listening to the stories of the cave of the pirates' treasure, and she had always dreamed of finding it. She had spent years studying maps and legends, and had finally saved up enough money to make the journey to the island. But when she arrived, she found that the island was even more dangerous than she had imagined. Pirates roamed the streets, and gunshots could be heard in the distance. She knew that she had to be careful if she wanted to survive. She spent weeks searching for the cave, but every lead she followed turned out to be a dead end. The pirates were always one step ahead of her, and she was constantly on the run. But Samantha was determined. She knew that she was close to finding the treasure, and she refused to give up. She spent every waking moment searching for clues, never letting her guard down. And then, one day, she found it. She had been exploring the jungle when she stumbled upon the entrance to the cave. It was hidden behind a waterfall, just as the legends had said. Samantha could hardly believe her luck. She cautiously made her way into the cave, using her flashlight to light the way. The walls were covered in moss and lichen, and the air was damp and musty. As she rounded a corner, she saw a figure standing in front of her. It was a tall, imposing man with a long beard and a pirate's hat. It was Blackbeard himself. "Welcome, my dear," said Blackbeard, with a smile. "I've been expecting you." Samantha was taken aback. She had heard stories about Blackbeard, but she had never imagined that she would meet him in person. "You're Blackbeard?" she asked, her voice shaking. Blackbeard chuckled. "Yes, my dear. And you are here for the treasure, I presume?" Samantha nodded, clutching her backpack tightly. "Very well," said Blackbeard. "But first, you must prove yourself worthy." He gestured towards a set of pillars on the other side of the room. "You must each take a turn standing on one of those pillars. If you are worthy, the treasure will be revealed. Samantha knew what she had to do. She stepped forward, taking her turn on the pillars. As she did so, she felt a strange energy coursing through her body. She could hear whispers in her ears, and see visions of ancient pirates and sea monsters. When she had finished, Blackbeard smiled. "You are worthy," he said. "The treasure is yours." He led her to a small alcove in the wall, where a chest was hidden. Samantha opened the chest and gasped at what she saw inside. It was filled with gold coins, jewels, and precious artifacts. It was the treasure of a lifetime. As Samantha stared in awe at the treasure before her, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned to see a group of pirates entering the cave, led by a fierce-looking captain. "Well, well, well," said the captain, sneering at Samantha. "Looks like we've got ourselves a treasure hunter. And she's found our treasure, boys." The pirates closed in on Samantha, their swords drawn. She knew that she was outnumbered and outmatched, but she refused to give up without a fight. She reached for her backpack, pulling out a flare gun. She aimed it at the ceiling and fired, causing a shower of sparks to rain down on the pirates. As they recoiled in surprise, Samantha made a break for the entrance of the cave. She ran as fast as she could, dodging the pirates' swords and leaping over obstacles. She burst out of the cave, gasping for breath. She looked around and saw that the island was now engulfed in chaos. The pirates were fighting amongst themselves, each trying to claim the treasure for themselves. Samantha knew that she had to get off the island as soon as possible. She ran to the shore, where she found a small rowboat. She pushed it into the water and started rowing as fast as she could. As she rowed away from the island, she could hear the sounds of battle behind her. She knew that she had narrowly escaped with her life, but she also knew that she had something that the pirates would stop at nothing to get. She made it back to civilization safely, but she knew that she could never go back to the island. She had the treasure, but at what cost? She had risked her life for a pile of gold, and she wasn't sure if it had been worth it. In the end, Samantha decided to donate most of the treasure to charity. She kept a small portion for herself, enough to live comfortably for the rest of her life, but the rest went towards helping those in need. As she sat in her comfortable home, surrounded by her family and friends, Samantha knew that she had made the right decision. The treasure had brought her to the brink of death, but it had also taught her the value of compassion and generosity. And even though the legend of the Cave of the Pirates' treasure continued to inspire others to seek out their own fortune, Samantha knew that the real treasure was the lessons that she had learned along the way. Years passed, and Samantha continued to live her life, content in the knowledge that she had made a difference in the world. But one day, she received a mysterious letter in the mail. The letter was written on old parchment, and the writing was elegant and precise. It was signed by none other than the infamous Captain Blackbeard, the most notorious pirate in history. Samantha was skeptical at first, but as she read on, she began to realize that the letter was authentic. It seemed that Blackbeard had been keeping tabs on her ever since she had discovered his treasure. In the letter, Blackbeard revealed that he had been impressed by Samantha's bravery and resourcefulness. He had watched as she had risked her life to escape his clutches, and he had come to respect her. But Blackbeard had a proposition for Samantha. He wanted to meet with her, to discuss a matter of great importance. He promised that he would not harm her, and that he would even help her in any way that he could. Samantha was hesitant at first, but her curiosity got the better of her. She agreed to meet with Blackbeard, but only on her own terms. They arranged to meet on a deserted island in the Caribbean. Samantha arrived early, armed with a hidden knife and a pistol. She was cautious, but also excited to finally meet the legendary pirate face to face. But Blackbeard had a proposition for Samantha. He wanted to meet with her, to discuss a matter of great importance. He promised that he would not harm her, and that he would even help her in any way that he could. Samantha was hesitant at first, but her curiosity got the better of her. She agreed to meet with Blackbeard, but only on her own terms. They arranged to meet on a deserted island in the Caribbean. Samantha arrived early, armed with a hidden knife and a pistol. She was cautious, but also excited to finally meet the legendary pirate face to face. As she waited, she heard the sound of a ship approaching. She turned and saw a massive vessel, flying the Jolly Roger, Blackbeard's infamous flag. The ship docked on the shore, and Blackbeard himself emerged from the captain's quarters. He was tall and imposing, with a thick black beard and a long coat adorned with gold buttons. Samantha approached him, her hand on her knife. But to her surprise, Blackbeard greeted her warmly. He thanked her for coming, and offered her a seat at his table. Over a glass of rum, Blackbeard revealed his true intentions. He told Samantha that he was dying, and that he wanted to make amends for his past misdeeds. He had heard of Samantha's charitable works, and he wanted to help her in any way that he could. He offered her a share of his treasure, as well as his expertise in sailing and navigation. Samantha was taken aback by Blackbeard's offer. She had expected him to try to kill her, or to demand that she return his treasure. But instead, he seemed genuine and remorseful. In the end, Samantha agreed to work with Blackbeard. Together, they set sail on his ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, in search of new adventures and new opportunities for good. As they journeyed across the seas, Samantha and Blackbeard became